What does it mean now to be an inclusion and diversity officer? And some of these novelties, how does this show in a national agency now?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this panel. I'm glad to be here at least virtually. So hi to Ostende, first of all. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the Inclusion and Diversity Officer of the German National Agency Jugend für Europa. Well, my actual title is Advisor on Inclusion and Diversity, and I coordinate the inclusion and diversity efforts, measures, and strategies at the German National Agency. And well, first of all, I think that the new strategy and the really reinforced role of inclusion and diversity is a good starting point to do a kind of inventory again of what we already do regarding inclusion and diversity at our national agencies, what has still to be done, what does work well, what doesn't maybe. That is, yeah, we already did a lot of things in the youth sector before, but really with the strategy and the also the political reinforcement, this is a really good point to have a closer look at that again. And well, the role of inclusion officers generally is also an important one for that, I think. As I said, it is about coordinating the efforts, but it's also about accompanying the efforts, also accompanying colleagues with that. In the youth field, also there are a lot of national agencies already have had inclusion and diversity officers. But now, let's say with the new strategy and inclusion and diversity officers also really mentioned there and their role mentioned there, it's reinforced and also extended to others, to other national agencies and to other fields, as Marta also mentioned already. At our German national agency, apart from my coordinating role, we also have national inclusion officers in the different program actions. So for European Solidarity Corps and for both key actions in Erasmus+. And we have an internal working group on inclusion and diversity, where also, for example, the training department is represented, the public relations department. And this is, I think this is really important because it's a transversal issue, as we all know. And from what I see and perceive, it's really, well, this transversal role of inclusion and diversity is once again reinforced also in almost all the NAs, with working groups like this being founded and other mechanisms to support the strategy implementation.
Thank you very much, Hanna, for this. So we could, I guess, say that from a perspective of beneficiaries, all the organizations applying for projects and so on, now more and more with this, the beneficiaries would have concrete people in the national agency that they can turn to whenever they would have some questions or would need guidelines or support and so on in this field. Would this be a fair summary, for example?
Yes, I think you can say that. But of course, the first persons to turn to are also always the program officers, because they are the ones that really, that know also the applications and that also do good counseling. But of course, if there are more specific questions related to inclusion and diversity, in many NAs, the inclusion officers are really good persons to turn to.
Thank you very much.
And also, well, I think this is another point that is really reinforced in the strategy as well. support for organizations, for interested persons, for beneficiaries is getting even more important when it comes to inclusion and diversity, because the expectations towards organizations, as Marta also mentioned already, is clearly described in the strategy, and I think that it's important to give also support with that from the side of organizations. So there are a lot of plans on even more support, on better counseling, on maybe even coaching organizations, and a lot of really direct support to organizations that want to work inclusively.
Thank you very much. Now, the third perspective we would like to hear, Jan Vanhee, from your side. You represent the Flemish National Authority, more the ministerial national level. You have rich experience in the European youth work from your work perspective. How would you be able to maybe share with us? You have been involved in the past programs, in developing the programs themselves as well. Could you maybe shortly tell us what does for you the inclusion and diversity strategy now bring from this national perspective?
Good morning, everyone. I think it's a big step forward, and I'm fascinated by the dream of leaving no one behind you. That's one of the wishes that von der Leyen expresses, and I think it's a big step forward also for the whole European project, in my opinion. Thanks also, and that was also mentioned yesterday in the intervention of Sophia, that our head of states and governments understood that the European project cannot be built without a social pillar. And as long as we don't understand that everything what we are doing in our programs has no impact for all citizens, and especially in our point of view for young people in the EU and in the project, then I think that we are in big problems. We have also to be modest, and the strategy is a big step forward, in my opinion, when I'm looking back till the conception of the white paper on youth. Then inclusion and diversity was not mentioned. Youth work was not mentioned in the white paper. And thanks to all the efforts, especially all of you and on the grassroots active and in the organizations and in the commission, you stimulated us to bring that issue on the table during discussions by directors general or in the council. And so I think it's very valuable, it's necessary. There is a mousetrap in it. The whole description or definition of young people with fewer opportunities, I understand that we have to use that. But when we are looking very critical what is going on and in Europe, and when I'm looking in my own city or in Flanders, what is a part of one of the three communities in Belgium, there is a huge problem on the level of education. So we have a huge gap between young people who are very high educated, and there is at least a group of 20%, even more, and I can be wrong, who are not at all educated. In my city, there are growing up children who cannot read and write. So we have a huge problem in literacy. Youngsters without a book, they don't know how to use a book. And I'm very privileged, I'm living in a well-developed region in the EU. So please, so I think it's a big step forward. It's a nice dream, leaving no one behind you. Thanks to you and all your efforts and actions and all the NGOs actively, you are bringing that topic on the agenda. But there is a long way to go, in my understanding, and we have to be honest. And yesterday, when the alderman was here, I was very charmed by. She was placing the people with a handicap in front. So I think in everything what we are doing, we have to put the most excluded people in the center, and they are human beings, so we have to develop actions with them. And I also had personally in a voluntary commitment of myself 28 years before in ATD Carmonde and with people who are living in Europe in extreme poverty. So it's not easy to bring them in those programs. And I'm a big believer in those programs. They are the royal vehicle to upgrade people in the social mobility. Mm-hmm. So you have gold in your hands with this strategy, and thanks to the Commission and all of you who worked on that, but we are not there. And when I'm looking to Flanders, who is a modest, small part in Belgium, then I'm thinking also, we are using, our government are using that, and it's one of the, how to say, cornerstones of their policy. We have a Flemish youth and children rights policy plan, and inclusion and diversity is one of the cornerstones also. We have an action on that in our preparation of the upcoming 10th cycle of the EU Youth Dialogue, together with our colleagues from Spain and Hungary. We are putting the third youth goal, inclusive societies, also in front. So it's a topic, it's daily work, it's ongoing, and it's so crucial for the success, in my opinion, of the European project.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you for that honesty also. And I think within that, it's very clear that the role of everyone working in the field is crucial, meaning that the organizations and all the support structures that are closest to the more vulnerable, the more marginalized young people, the internal shifts and changes that also need to happen there are key, that without that we also cannot have an inclusion and diversity society. So I think this is a great cue for our final guest speaker, Leo Kaserer, the CEO of Cubic from Austria. You actually come from an organization. So what does the inclusion and diversity strategy bring in the context of youth organizations for your work, for the inclusion of those most vulnerable? How do you see it? How do you work with it? Does it impact your work?
Hello, everybody out there in Ostende and wherever. I'm very pleased to be kind of a part of this circle and this discussion. For me, it's very important to continue what also was said before. For me, the whole program, the European program, Erasmus Plus and ESC is a diamond to use for local youth work. For me, it's very important to understand that young people, I think, like to participate in European activities. And I think to make it accessible for everyone is the key. And I see in the strategy now and also in the roadmap, that this is developing in the terms of we are moving from inclusion as one of the topics to the idea that inclusion is important and now is a precondition. And I think that's very, very valuable and that's very important. And also in this ID strategy, I see a lot of things mentioned and tackled. For example, how we can facilitate the inclusion of young people, and also what are the additional financial possibilities for inclusion projects. So I'm a very big fan, and I think it gets more and more usable and attractive to local youth work to use it. And when I say local youth work, I think with the strategy, it moved a little bit further by saying now it's not only youth work, it's social work which is included in the activities.
Thank you very much, Leo, for your perspective also. Now that we are starting to look really on all different levels, right? From a more international, institutional perspective down to the actual person that this strategy tries to really support, the young person, the person experiencing discrimination, marginalization. Marta, from your perspective, maybe from, also a little bit more personal, you've been also working with this for intensely for a while. What would you see as one of, or maybe even the biggest, added value of this strategy for a young person experiencing social marginalization, for example?
Well, I think one of the biggest achievements of the strategy, it was already one of the achievements of the previous one, but this one even more, I think it's really putting, as Leo was saying, inclusion and diversity as a precondition. It's not anymore something that the organization that is trying to reach this participant with a particular individual need can do if they want, but actually something that we are asking really to be the first thing that is thought through when implementing a project. And I think that puts these participants in a better off situation to feel the program as something that is also for them. Of course, I think, and I very much agree with what Jan was saying now, I think we have a long way to go. We are doing very well. We involve a lot of young people with fewer opportunities, but probably the objective is not to need a strategy anymore. To say we don't need a strategy because the program is inclusive, so we are there, and we simply take it as the normal. So one of the big achievements, I think, it's really to have like this declaration of intentions, very clear, something that they can claim and they can say, look, this program is for me and you need to also provide everything that it's in it so that I can take the same, if not more advantage than anyone else because I have the right to do so. No? So I think it's also about raising awareness for them. So it's providing also access for information for people that maybe don't know so well what's in it for them. The strategy is a starting point, but I think this is one area that we need to develop more, perhaps, to make more communication about what are the support mechanisms, what is the financial support available, but not only making clear organizations can go talk to your parents if you feel that they would not be supportive of you doing that. We can involve also your friends. We can provide a safe space for you to participate. So I think this is one of the biggest added value.
Thank you very much. Still, from a perspective of somehow, it's very hard to get away from this, that we see our system in layers, no? That maybe the organization we always imagine that works more on a closer level to a young person, and then if we look at a European Commission or institutional framework, sometimes unfortunately still far away from a young person maybe. Hopefully we are breaking those barriers more and more. Nevertheless, we have the national agencies who are closer, let's put it like this maybe, or at least perceived closer to the organization, maybe to the young person. So from perspective of the national agency, Hanna, what are some of the things maybe maybe you are discussing in your national agency as like the next steps now, how to support the implementation of the strategy more, your national plan. Maybe you can share with us a couple of examples. What does this now mean for the next months and years?
Yes, of course. First of all, let me say that I really like and support the vision that Marta mentioned, that at some point our programs will really simply be inclusive, and I think we're on a good way there. For us right now at the national agency, as I mentioned before, we are doing or have done this kind of inventory, and one of the basic things to do, I think, is getting everyone at the national agency itself on board. So we had some workshops already, and we still will have some workshops focusing on different aspects of inclusion and diversity, of our role in it, regarding the strategy implementation and the program priority. Because we think that this kind of, to set the right mindset and have the right attitude towards the topic as an organization is really important. And with this, we also try to find out what our NA colleagues actually still might need, speaking of support, when dealing with the funding mechanisms and the program mechanisms for inclusion and diversity. So this is, first of all, an internal process, let's say. But of course, what is very important, maybe the most important part of all, is also to get the right actors and stakeholders from outside the national agency on board, because we are, the inclusion officer, I think we are developing an expertise, but of course we're not the experts for the fields, and we're not the practitioners. So it's really important to get the stakeholders that really work in the fields on board, because they are the ones that can tell us about the needs of the fields, that can tell us what works, what doesn't work, and what they maybe need to really see the benefits of the EU youth programs for their youngsters, and what their youngsters actually need, talking about young people who are in the end at the center of all. So us, we already work together with external stakeholders. We have a working group, like an advisory group on inclusion and diversity, with stakeholders from different relevant fields, and we really foresee to still reinforce that cooperation when planning new measures, when planning, for example, national events for information, for networking. And in this context, we also foresee to have more, first of all, national events, to get organizations and youth workers and other experts from relevant fields on board. We found that providing networking opportunities between organizations that are really active in specific fields that are relevant for inclusion and diversity, for example, social youth work or disability representations, with organizations that already know the programs quite well. These kind of networks are really important and helpful, so we will try to foster that even more in the next years. Trying also to set a focus each year, because we found out that this really helps to better get to know the needs out there. And of course, also, we ourselves as national agency will put a lot of effort into making our own services, our own events, our own information, etc., more accessible, because, for one thing, this is like the base in order to really reach the right people and organizations. And of course, it's much about credibility as well, because how can we promote an inclusive program, expect organizations to work inclusively when our own services are not really accessible. So this will also be an important point, I think.
Thank you very much. Of course, we are hoping that everyone following this forum, both here with physical presence as well as maybe online, also gets inspiration. We know and we hope that many more workers at the national agencies, many more representatives of youth organizations and so on will see this panel also and get some inspiration also from these practices. And we have heard an important statement, I think, that resonates now, that it's always important to work on ourselves, whatever our position is, be it a youth organization, be it an institution, be it a workplace and so on. We also need to be able to do the work to create frameworks and environments where we can practice actually being inclusive. Jan, from perspective of national authorities, when you are thinking, could you share with us, are there any ways, any specific things that work well, how national authorities can actually support? Why is it important that national authorities need to stand behind this strategy, behind these approaches? And once they stand politically behind it, what can it mean practically also, maybe from your experience, to really be behind such a endeavor?
It's a huge question. Let us be very modest, first of all. So when I'm looking at my own administration, there are not so many people very active in all kind of topics linked with EU and international policies. And so, and that is already a warning light that in shrinking administrations, and it's busy since Reagan and Thatcher, we become in problem, I have to say, because our core business is preparing policy, implementing policy and monitoring policy, and we have the politicians who make the decisions, but you need also in setting the scene a strong administration. And our role in this is, in my opinion, we have to see and to look that the implementation is correct. But that is all things who are linked with the governance of the program. We have our responsibility. I think it's important to be very correct in all the things we are doing, because it's all about taxpayers' money and all those things. And so, but okay, that you can manage. The most important thing is what we are learning from the outcome. And so the programs and the projects young people and NGOs are doing. And that is interesting because the civil society, they are always avant-garde. They show us what is going on the grassroots, on the ground, what's happening there, which kind of challenges or problems or I don't know what are in society, and we are always late as administration to react. So that's for me very important in the work you are doing, especially with young people with fewer opportunities. What are trends? What are new challenges? What are good practice that we can use and share? So, but our role is very modest, and then especially also from Flanders, who is a small part, one of the communities of a member state. So do not overestimate our role. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that at least the message is quite clear that it's very important that civil society organizations and like the wider sector has channels of communication with the administration.
Yeah,
that there are ways how we can listen to each other and be heard. And I think this is something that definitely in all of our countries, I think we can see that it's very needed. And that is good to have ways and mechanisms to make it even better, to have then policies really alive, no? and people on the ground benefiting. Leo, I would like to come with the final question from my side to you. We have heard, like I've already emphasized now a couple of times, inclusion and diversity strategy is a living process, not just a document. From your experience, how can actually people from the field get involved? So could you share with us a couple of examples, maybe what you've experienced in the process that got us so far here? Because there were moments it was open for people from the field also to input. And do you see in the future now some ways how people from the field, be it from organizations, be it maybe even young people directly, could get involved to have their voice heard?
I think there are three points I would like to mention. The first one, and this is for me also manifested to our local youth work here, is that I teach at university, and nowadays I'm also asked to put in the European Solidarity Corps as a method into social work practice. And for me, this shows already that we are further, we are making progress. The second one I wanted to mention is that I see with the national agencies, with SALTO, Inclusion and Diversity, that there is this regular consultation. There is regular the chance for us as organizations who work on a daily basis with the young people to mention what we need, what are the things we think are important for our young people. And the third thing which I would like to mention why I think inclusion works now better is we have had a ring yesterday for a young person who is homeless. He is in a bad situation and he is very fascinated in a European Solidarity Corps. So first for me that's a good example to say, okay, he wants to do something, he wants to get out of his situation, and the European Voluntary Service and now the Solidarity Corps is a method to engage young people from different backgrounds. And then I was wondering, okay, what can we do? And I was calling in my Rückenwind network 3 different people and asking them if they are able to host in the very near future our young person. And all of these 3, they said, yes, we can. And I think this expresses also all our effort together to make this program accessible for young people. And I think it is already.
Thank you. Thank you also for sharing that story. I hope that if we had a chance to go around this room to the tables here that are surrounded by practitioners from the field, that I hope that each one of us here in this room would also maybe have one good story where we could say, actually, it worked, so that we can also see that it does impact, things do change, things are going further as well. Not forgetting, of course, that there's a long road ahead, a lot of work still to be done, as Jan said, and I think in this time and age we are very much aware all the time of the hardships, yeah? So it's also good sometimes to think on the things that do work sometimes. So it's good to hear that. Thank you for that. We have come to a moment now in our discussion where we can turn to our colleague Peter Jan, who has been following in the Padlet. Maybe some questions, some comments from our online group of participants, from participants, colleagues here in the room. Peter Jan, maybe you have like one message resonating, maybe one question even like that has a lot of likes, or something that you would like to share with us now to include.
Yeah, so firstly I would like to share a point of feedback to even the ID forum itself, which was launched and widely supported in the Padlet, and it's of including sign language interpreters at a forum like this to make sure that we can realize the inclusion that we are talking about. And then I would like to share one comment, and I think that this resonates quite well with the discussion we had, with the panel we had. And I will just read it out loud. It goes like this. I found myself questioning if the aim can be that at one point we do not need the strategy for diversity and inclusion anymore. I believe that as a societal context is ever changing, we will always need strong strategic basis to make sure that we hold on to our values. So maybe we can have a reaction on that one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Peter Jan. Interesting perspective, no? Perhaps, Marta, you're nodding. Maybe you would like to start. Just a short comment on that.
Yes, of course. I mean, it was really, as Jan was saying, we are talking about dreams. It was a way to illustrate that, of course, if all the principles of inclusion and diversity would be so interiorized in our daily life, we would not need a roadmap to say what should be the ideal situation. But I very much believe that there are these, changing and emerging needs that create that there are always some structural differences that put some people at more difficulty, and that brings me to think also one thing that happened during the discussions for the new strategy. That was one of the things that we did with the organizations, with the national agencies, was taking the former list of obstacles that it was always said it's indicative, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's a good guidance to understand and to give visibility to maybe the most representative obstacles that people may face, and say, okay, this list was created for the previous program generation. Is there anything new that maybe has emerged in the last years and that we would want that it's more clearly put here, so that someone goes and says, oh yes, I'm on it because I have. And for example, mental health was one of the things that came in that said, okay, theoretically, it could be covered for what we have already, but it would be important that it's clearly mentioned there. We also had a lot of organizations talking about the need to make more visible the target group of children that have lived in institutional care, for example, that perhaps has created some patterns that make it more difficult for them to be included in society. And then certain barriers, for example, in education and training paths that perhaps are not so classic learning paths as we would think of, and that make it also difficult to participate in a learning mobility and an international project. So these are just examples. Perhaps we open up more consultation, or some of you will send us some feedback and we'll say, look, I feel it's important that you would highlight some other aspect, and this is why we say it's a living document that has to evolve over the years.
Now here in studio, Jan, you're also nodding. Final maybe reaction on this comment from the audience, from our participants?
I think it's well said by Marta. So the fact that the Commission, the national agencies, the national authorities, you all are taking young people seriously, that's already something. And it's ongoing, and yeah, I think, and the inclusion is strategy and diversity strategy and many other things are pushing us forward. So keep on going.
Thank you. Hanna, how do you see strategies in the future, changing emerging needs? Any comment?
Yes, of course, we are far away from an inclusive society, and that is closely connected with what we can do in the program. So, of course, it's a vision that might never be reached, to be honest, an inclusive society. But I think it's important to have these kind of visions, to know what we want to work towards. And that being said, I absolutely agree with what was said before. Of course, we always have to see or take the developments in societies into account. We also see that in the different national contexts, there are differences regarding societal needs, regarding societal realities, and this is also already taken into account by the strategy. So there's possibilities to adapt a little bit to the different regional, national contexts already, and I'm quite sure that this will continue to be that way. And well, it's already been said that we talk about a living strategy and a living document.
Thank you. Leo, maybe a few final reflections from your side on this.
Okay, there is one issue yesterday raised, or one thing is they ask if we include young people with this difficulties, with this and this and this, and I always showed my paper saying all. For me, it doesn't matter whom we, how we, no, for me it doesn't matter whom we involve. For me, it's important that all who want to participate can participate. We have to provide how to do that. And for me, that's the key issue. And I think we are a little bit further in these programs to make it possible and accessible for everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that final message. And I think that this forum, Inclusion and Diversity Forum 2021, is an amazing space to actually go into details of how. No? So this is also something that we will be doing here further. I think with this we have come to the end of our discussion. I would like to thank everyone for your contribution and your attention.